Hello, everyone. Welcome to the January 28th Historic Commission. I'll start with the roll. I'm here. Celine Swenson Harris is absent, although I've been informed she will be joining later. Commissioner Fribley.
Yeah.
Commissioner Donovan
Here.
and Commissioner Howard is absent.
Is that, how many are we supposed to have?
Up to 9. And Tom and I were talking about trying to figure out how to get a solicitation to the other public bodies that can have folks appointed here, so Willamette Lane and Springfield Public Schools. But we can't have direct contact, so there's a complication there.
Planned on reaching out to Allison and CMO to see about that solicitation or when the next call might be going out, and if we can expedite that, whatever the case might be.
Did we lose Charlotte? Oh,
We lost Charlotte, but whenever the next solicitation comes around, I'll let her know. That's up as well. All right, and review the agenda. Any additions or corrections to the agenda?
I do have a potential case that will be coming in for a window exchange. I'll get there when the allotted time comes.
Correct. All right. So we will,
And I guess we need to speak a little bit about the funding, possible freeze, possible not freeze.
we'll go with that under the update section to the
perfect.
extent that there is an update.
Yeah. New employee at the front desk, Charles,
Yeah.
coming to hang out,
Yeah.
see how it
Great.
goes.
Okay, and with no further additions, is there any objection to approving the agenda with the addition of the window use, when the appropriate time for historic land use application updates comes and an update on funding when we get there?
Motion to approve agenda
Steve.
per your comments.
I'll take it without objection. And moving along, now we have to vote for a chair and vice chair. So every year we have to vote for a new chair and vice chair. And there are only 3 of us in the room. There are 2 positions. I have it on good authority from one of the others who will be joining us in 28 minutes that she would be willing to accept a vice chair appointment, but that she's willing to step aside as well. I am gonna run for chair. I guess we should do that first.
Good.
Anybody else want to run for chair? All
No,
right, seeing none.
But you do a good job,
Thank you.
so it's not.
Try.
You know,
Seeing none, I'll close nominations and I would accept a motion for chair by acclamation.
Does that mean we motion?
Yeah, I
Motion,
can't do it this time.
motion for Elise to
Okay.
be chair.
Okay, and is there any objection?
you did that
Seeing
well.
none, then I will be chair, elect chair for another year. All right, now vice chair.
Motion to appoint Celine as vice chair.
Okay. Kirkwood, any interest in vice chair?
You know, not really, but I
Okay.
also feel, you know, I do want to contribute also, but anyway, I guess somebody else wants to do it. I'm more than, you know,
Her feeling was
kinda
that
wanna-
if literally
when I
anyone
come
else
here-
wants to do it,
when I come here, I feel like I should do some things, but I don't, you know, I'll live without, or no, I can't even see. If somebody else wants to do it, well, that's great.
I would say she's willing, but it's not exactly a want.
What, I guess really the only thing I really have to do is if you weren't here.
Run the
is that-
meeting,
Is that,
more or less, yeah.
yeah. You know, cause I don't do that much for it. I'll be happy to be vice chair and do that if everybody
All right.
was, happy. Don't walk out.
Any objection to Kirkwood as vice chair? All right, seeing none, congratulations,
Well, thank you.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Yeah. I'll
Moving,
just need to get a hold of you later,
Yeah.
just make sure, you know, when things happen.
Look good on your resume.
there you go.
Yeah, if I was, except I'm retired, so.
You can volunteer for more things now.
I can-
Yes, yeah,
that's
there you
true.
go. moving along to public comment. Any comments from the group?
I'll just introduce myself. We've met informally, but so I'm Mark Rust. I'm the planning manager. I work with Tom. Tom works under my supervision. And I've been with the city about 7.5 years. And I also manage our code enforcement program. I've worked with Jenna on a lot of different projects. I used to process, I started as a senior planner in the role that Tom is in now and have processed a number of land use applications over those years. But anyway, so I'm just try to attend these periodically, probably once a year generally. But I'm happy to always be a resource, and Tom and I do talk a fair bit about stuff that he's doing with this group, so. That's all.
All right.
Charles could introduce himself.
I'm just a member of the public. I'm Charles. I'm a permit tech at building.
So you're at the counter now, are you
Yep.
at the two desks right there?
Yeah, I'm at the 2 desks at the counter.
He covers the both of the 2 desks, basically.
Yeah,
So you have a dual position then, you mean?
I would say it's multifaceted.
Welcome. Moving along to historic land use applications. Tom will take the window now.
Yes, so it's not an application at this time. There won't be any good street view, probably not a good street view. We can check. This was spurred from,
In number lots.
Yeah.
might be visible on this. Yeah, yes, it is. Wow. Branches in the way. All right, we can kind of see. This little window right here. You can see vinyl windows around according to the current owner. They came in to get a structural permit through building for internal partition walls. As I take it, this bathroom space is not separated by walls to the rest of the living space. So in order to do that, they need to get a structural permit to put in their internal walls, which doesn't trigger anything for us. Building code says that any wet surface, which below this window is a bathtub, needs to be a certain height of above or be tempered glass if it's not a certain height above the wet surface. This person thinks that it likely does not meet that height, so they would need to exchange it for a tempered glass window. That would then trigger the need for historic review, because in the guidelines, it states that replacement doors and windows must be approved by historic commission. Pretty much cut and dry as far as that goes. We recently had our fees go up. A type 1 was originally $80. It is now $2,200, which can be prohibitive to people doing this correctly. This person was not perturbed, but this was going to be an over-the-counter building permit application, at which point I pumped the brakes to at least bring it to you today. Seeing as how we were having our meeting, that was good timing on that part. But it sounds like at this point, if it does not meet that height requirement for being non-tempered, they will need to exchange it for a tempered glass window, like for like exchange as far as existing being vinyl windows, according to this person.
What is a tempered glass?
It would be a non-shattering kind of glass. So if you were to slip and fall in the tub, your elbow or something isn't going to necessarily go through it like a pane glass window would be.
Same kind of glass. It's in like a car, in a car accident, kind of like
Yeah,
this one
okay.
piece that's tempered.
Or it's
That's
little
lamp.
tiny little pieces. It's not big, jagged, pointy pieces of glass when it breaks.
And that's due to there being a wet surface, a tub underneath that window. If there were to be a slip, if it's a certain height up, your fall is going to put you underneath that most likely. But if it's not at that height,
Sure.
if you fall, you could be putting a piece of your body through that glass. So
So they're saying these are existing vinyl windows?
that's
that are-
correct. Yeah, and 430E is a primary significant contributing. It is side facing and a minor size of window. Also, they inquired, well, what if I just take out the window and replace it all with siding? That's also affecting the
Also, yeah.
envelope, also going to be a review.
And I mean, frankly, probably
Now, why is it?
be
so-
met with more scrutiny from the, assuming it's a vinyl window.
Yeah.
Just like, for what it's worth, I think this group would probably be less likely to look fondly on essentially putting plank through where the window is now.
The
opposed
opening
to-
is still an opening, right? Even-
Yeah.
Like, even if you swapped it for a similar vinyl window now, it could still be swapped to a more original window later.
What changes it from 80 to 2,200? What really?
Our council recently approved fee increases, and that was one fee that was increased. I think Mark can shed some light on how we wound
Yeah.
up there.
So we went through a 2-year-long process of analyzing our fees and the time it takes us to process land use applications. State law allows us to collect fees in one of two ways. We can either collect our fees based on average cost of providing the service by application type or the actual cost of providing the service. We've always done average cost. So I'm not gonna use this example, but I'll use like a different application type example. If somebody wants to build a new building on a vacant lot, it would go through a site plan review. We would review how they want to lay out the site, evaluate parking and landscaping and setbacks and that kind of stuff. So the average, if we analyze, say, 20 of those applications in a year, what's the average time it takes us to process that application? So one may benefit, it may take us shorter on some and longer on
Right.
others. Other types of applications, pretty much anything that goes to a public hearing, we transition to actual cost of service. So we'll keep track of the amount of time we spend on an application. The applicant will pay a deposit up front, and then we'll charge against that deposit. And if there's money left over at the end, we would refund that. All that to say, with these applications, what we found, we hired Portland State University to help us study how much time it does take us. And we all kept track for a period of time, and we did some other analysis and things. What we found is the fees, when they were originally set for the historic district, when the historic district was first created, they were kept artificially low to incentivize people to apply for historic applications, to not discourage them. So what our council decided, we presented that as part of the bigger package, but called out historic applications and stated that, they are artificially low. You want us to keep them, effectively, we're subsidizing that type of work in the historic district. Their direction was to not keep them artificially low, to raise them to what would be the average cost in this case of providing the processing of that application. So that's why the significant jump in this case is they had been kept artificially low at the outset of creating the historic district.
So how, okay, restate how that will impact this particular application.
It won't necessarily.
Well, it'll cost a lot more.
It will cost more though.
What was the fee difference? 80?
80 compared to 2,200.
So if they're just replacing one window,
It's likely the application will cost more than the work itself, I would think.
that seems probable.
And how much time does it take you to review that?
Something like that, hour wise,
Is it a type 1 or type 2?
that would be a type 1, I would think a minor alteration to a primary significant, being side facing as well. Once I receive that application, I could have it done in a day.
Follow-up question. When it comes here, is it a public hearing or just for the quasi judicial public hearings, like planning commission stuff?
The latter of what you said.
Copy.
And that's only my time. I think a type 1, Mark trusts me on those to send out without his review. Type 2s do go through him for review, so that's added staff time there. But for something that's simple, not all type 1s will go that quickly. But for something like this, pretty quick.
And for what it's worth, we've already identified this as a fee in our code where we could probably create a more tiered approach to the fees.
Sure.
We will be updating our fees. So the normal fee update process is every May, June, we proposed new fees for adoption for July first is the beginning of our fiscal year. So every year around that time frame, our city council adopts new fees. Usually it's just a 3% or cost of living increase to all the fees. They just add a cost of living increase to all the fees. Sometimes there's new fees that come up over the year. So we have an opportunity within the next handful of months to have another shot at updating some fees. It may be, and potentially there's input from this group, that we look at providing another tier of historic review approach when we do that within the next handful of
It
months.
seems important because one of the big problems is people swapping windows covertly, right? Like, because they don't wanna do wood work, they don't wanna, like, it's expensive, it's complicated. And we've just added one huge barrier for them to like not go through us, right?
Yeah.
And not be forthcoming with what they're doing. And that feels very, like, that's just, I mean, if this
Or
was my
having the-
client, they would lose their mind, right? Like, I would be like, this is the thing, they would be like, like, it would be a real big deal.
Well, and if it's a $500 fix and
Mhm.
it's $2,000 to get the permit to do the fix, it
Yeah.
seems ridiculous.
Seems crazy, so,
Yeah, I'll put it on next agenda so we can have a larger conversation about it, I think, if that's okay with everybody.
and is this
So-
something that, like, would,
As long as end of February isn't gonna be too far into the fee setting process for you all,
No.
for us to have
Mhm.
meaningful feedback. Okay.
Well, so they won't be doing this soon, is that then obviously?
can we tell them to come back in July and
Or
hopefully the
could
fee will
we-
be less?
I think, are you asking today, could the like for like, I was trying to read the code, I don't know the guidelines, but is there any allowance or exception that would allow them to do like for like and not have to do? the
There is
review?
there's a safety exception in the code.
And this is a safety issue.
This is a safety issue.
Yeah.
So that's something to look into, I say. Went to school for
Got
it.
that JD ready?
But in other words, you talked to them today
Yeah, minutes
and,
ago.
and
Yeah.
they're not gonna do anything tomorrow or what, so.
Right, yeah,
We would have time to.
yeah, I gave them my card to reach back out, that
You
should
didn't
probably
give your
done
home address,
information.
did you?
No, not at all. But yeah, hopefully I can have some conversation going on with this person to let them know that if this is by any means something that can wait, or the safety issue might be able to
Yeah,
find an
I
exception.
I don't know how, yeah, I don't know how that would work. I think that's just an exception to. I think it's just an exception to the guidelines, but there might be a larger exception that I'm forgetting.
I mean, if they were wanting to replace all the windows,
A little short.
certainly,
yeah,
um, and this being spurred by a safety issue, being a wet surface and it's being non-tempered glass,
Right,
sounds like regardless of them getting their building
Mm-hmm.
permit and triggering all of this in the first place, they could slip through that window
right.
right now.
It's a safety issue already. Yeah,
Right.
the one other time we used it, and it feels similar here, was the asbestos siding. I don't know if you were here for that.
No,
It was stucco siding that had asbestos in it. And so we were like, well, we'd like to replace it with stucco. Nobody here does the kind of stucco.
Mm.
And so we used a safety exception to allow for hardy plank to replace it.
Gotcha.
That was
Can I
our.
ask a question?
Yeah.
On that safety exception, is the safety exception to the fee or the safety exception to the aesthetic that is contributing?
I would have, that would be, yeah, that would be a probably a city side issue, so I don't wanna make too much of my role, cause I'm not the city's attorney. But we have previously used it at least for exceptions to the aesthetics.
Yeah, that was one that we basically normally would advise as this group that they would have needed to replace stucco with stucco
Mhm.
per the design guidelines. And so in that case, like normally wood windows, you gotta keep wood windows. They have to be wood windows. If they're existing wood windows, you cannot remove that wood window. You cannot throw away that window. You cannot do anything. Definitely no vinyl. But like the siding in that instance, it was like, okay, you get a workaround because of the asbestos.
So if you get a safety exception to the aesthetic, then do you still need that review? Because we're gonna wait.
That would be a city side
Yeah, yeah.
question, because our role as the historic commission is limited to providing public feedback. So we aren't a decision-making body, we are a feedback-giving body for a variety of reasons, both in the code and and the overlay of Oregon law on that. And so we provide recommendations, the city makes determinations on the staff side. And so we can't, for example, we couldn't today waive that fee. That would be a city side issue that we have no control over.
I think in that case, though, it is still undergoing, that one is still undergoing review, like that one's still undergoing a design review for the replacement of the siding and making sure. Right,
I think so. That might have
Yeah.
been one that Drew worked on right
before.
before I got here. I think I went to go take the final pictures with him. I think it was right up Fifth Street perhaps. It was like a
That's
green
right.
stucco.
it was like it was a pebble dash.
Yeah,
Oh,
it was
okay,
weird.
okay, maybe
It was a
not.
weird one.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not sure.
It's a conglomerate stucco.
Pebble dash, yeah, they like literally like bleh on there and then like throw rocks at it
Yeah.
until it sticks in.
Yeah, that was not the.
There's also like bottle dash, which has like little broken glass pieces of like old bottles, which is pretty cool. That one might have been bottle dash and not pebble dash. I don't remember.
Right on. Well,
Public House has pebble dash. That,
oh,
like crazy
Yeah,
rough,
yeah.
rocky outside.
that makes sense. Well, we'll need to come to a determination on that. I think the broader discussion on fees for next meeting is certainly, yeah, ripe for discussion on that.
It could be a recommendation from this body to the council. You
Yeah.
could testify in front of council. I mean, it wouldn't hurt for even somebody from this body to go make a statement or provide a letter.
Happy to.
And then I think I can reach out to our city attorney to see how we might be able to apply a safety exception to like review and or
Review
fee
fee.
waiver, yeah.
There's no fee waiver,
Oh,
There you
no,
go.
no fee waiver.
No fee waiver.
but process waiver maybe.
All right, moving along to go to the work plan first. Educational opportunities, we got sent one this month. Right? Not misremembering that?
It may have already
May have already
passed.
passed.
There's one in March, right?
Thought so.
Window.
Maybe it's
You
coming up.
sent something out, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I have no idea. at
Yeah,
this
I think it
point
was
what that
March or.
It was a CLG workshop, I believe.
Webinar, hold on, NAPC's webinar series, January 30th.
2 days from now. There is still time.
To attend.
About historic resource surveys, unlocking the foundations of preservation.
So.
Yeah.
Throwing that out there as an opportunity.
Seeing as how we've had some survey going on, which I'll give an update on that once we get there. But if you wanted to know more about that, I think that was what this workshop was for.
And apparently Charlotte had sent one back in December, the Window Preservation Alliance Annual Conference, March 14th and 15th in Astoria.
Perfect. Oh, yes, I
And
remember
it's
that.
rare for it to be here. I'm told by Charlotte. Okay. Anything else? Moving along. I guess we'll do funding right here. So, there was a brief pause on federal grants and loans. Just for this group's awareness, we are funded partially by a SHPO grant, which comes through the National Historic Preservation Office.
Department of Interior.
Yeah, the Department of Interior. Is unclear what the impact will be. I don't know if city staff has anything further that has been paused for now, and I've heard that I'll let you tell what.
Yeah,
city
I reached out to
attorney
Curry
said.
this morning before the news came out of the judge staying that decision, which I believe that has a time frame
It does.
until February 5th or 3rd.
About third.
Yeah, February 3rd by 5 PM, that will either have more action on it or be lifted for the freeze of grant funds to take effect until further review by the federal government, which will affect our grant and our ability to spend. We do have, at least this year, at least 3 projects coming up, our phase 2 of Washburn, the Heritage Awards, and Dr. Lewis's research that we were also going to fund will all be on hold. I don't know what that means for the time frame of the grant itself and how that money, being that we can't use it, how does that work out for the rest of the grant? I don't know if you
So-
have any information on that, but
Yeah, I will, I am a state employee, but I'm not acting in that capacity right now. I'm explain that right here. So did SHPO say that it will impact fund? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I don't have anything further except for when we do the Washburn survey, talk to the, obviously, I'm sure the city attorney's office is well apprised, but I'd want to make sure that we have something in the bid that makes it clear that what would happen if these funds were to not become available.
yeah,
You'll be more on the bid side.
yeah, and I guess to give an update to that, I did reach out to WCRA. Because it's under 10,000, we wouldn't have to get competing bids again from our contracting department. I think we would still need to like take something in, but it wouldn't be a competitive process where we have to go with a different company to complete that work for us, seeing as how WCRA completed phase 1. It would make the most sense to have them complete phase 2. I received an email yesterday, I believe, back from them stating that they had their internal meeting about work plans going forward. They are more than happy to take on our phase 2, and we just need to work out those details, the contract, the bid, everything else, what it would cost. So at least we're not to that point yet, that we're in a contract that will be affected by this. At most, we're on hold.
We are as to Dr. Lewis, correct?
Yes.
That we are under contract for that.
I believe, well, I haven't seen anything written on that. We were
Okay.
going to have our initial meeting with him. He did make his estimate known. But as far as our contracting department and any like wet signatures for anything, I haven't seen any of that come through. So I don't think we
Okay.
are under contract with him currently.
Okay.
That is something I'll need to get cleared up in light of all of this.
Yeah, it is always my endeavor to make sure that this group does not get elevated to any radar more than it needs to be. So just, we could work with contracting folks and make sure that if we are not under contract, we have. So I don't know if this group wants to take any sort of motions on. I don't think we need any sort of motions, that they're always subject to contracting approval, so.
I will find out
Thank you.
and we'll see where that goes.
Any questions, comments, concerns? All right. And we will move along to the Indigenous Histories Project, which actually you've just heard most of.
Yep.
The update that we have got it all lined up, SHPO. We've got a tentative agreement with the or with the museum rather. And in the works with Dr. Lewis, unclear where exactly in the process, but have more clarity on that next month, I'm sure. Walking tour guide, Celine is not here.
Full business.
I know she's working, so I'm gonna expect her probably out of the Capitol here any second. Main Street program and the SHPO workshop.
So, few things, just for everyone's information. So Springfield used to be part of the Oregon Main Street Network program, which is kind of a state managed, but also sort of a national thing, but by being part of this Main Street program, it allows the city and properties within the city to be eligible for some additional grant opportunities, which is pretty cool, as well as some other resources available through the program. But the grant is kind of the big one. So the Oregon Main Street grant is hopefully also through SHPO, also partially federally funded, so who knows? The grant application is actually due next month, well, early March, mid-March. And And so Springfield had been part of the Main Street program and there's multiple tiers of participation, and we were involved at a very high level of participation a long time ago, which was problematic and resource intensive. It was problematic because it was resource intensive, so it had to have like its own operating board and like bank accounts and staff and like dedicated like matching kind of monies from the city, and like it all fell apart at one point, and there was a lot of bad mojo kind of among some of the previous city staff who were part of that fallout, and Nedco used to be sort of the managing nonprofit for it. Anyhow, it kind of destructed, and so we've not been part of the Main Street program for many years now. However, SRDC, another local community group, I guess, nonprofit, Springfield Renaissance Development Corp. It's a funny name. They / I'm on the board, have actually now re-enrolled Springfield in the program at the entry level tier, which requires none of that complexity and basically just gives us the opportunity to apply for this grant money. The grant, like basically there needs to be a nonprofit or a body that is the point of contact, right? Basically the organizer for the local program. So SRDC is the Main Street representative or whatever. And the grant has to be applied for by that body. So that can happen in multiple ways. You could solicit proposals by private, building owners or whatever, or the body can just kind of propose something. Since this is our first time in a long time applying for this as a city, we kind of just made executive decisions, partially because it's less complicated that way, and we're just trying to dip our toes in a little bit. There are up to $400,000 available per project. We're not going that big. We're starting with something a little more approachable.
Multiple projects around the state.
Oh, yeah,
So,
there'll be, multiple projects around the
Yeah.
state. So for this one, the application we're currently working on, because it's due in March, is 4 to 5. We're still locking in whether the 5th one's gonna be at different sites along Main Street. Specifically doing refurb / rehab / reconstruction in a couple of cases of historic transom windows. Only the transoms, just the transoms, little baby bite size thing that we can, and then it'll spread it along Main Street, from one of the ones we're looking at is the old Nedco building. We're also looking definitely at the Queen Bee building, the Masonic Lodge. Masonic Lodge has vinyl replacements, like the entire strip. It's not just like little inserts of vinyl. It's like all of the wood is gone and it's just a big ribbon of like vinyl, fake transom, fake wood. Little baby windows all the way across. So ripping that out and reconstructing it out of wood. We're working with Julie at Williamo Window Restoration. The next one down is the Biscuit Kitchen. So in the Stevens Perkins, we've got replaced, and then the middle bay, it's still plywooded over. In that one, in the middle bay, we still actually have original intact glass and mullions, except for the very middle pane where like literally last year when they put the Biscuit Kitchen sign up, they drilled holes right through the glass and I could have murdered them. But fortunately, when we actually redid the 2 on either side, which were mostly broken, I hoarded all of the sort of intact pieces and they're in my office. So I think I might have one pane that we can use in the broken pane. So anyhow, got that building, Planktown. So it has actually 2 bays plus a baby end bay. So behind the Planktown sign was originally transoms. And then in the 40s, the post office moved into the East Bay and has they replaced it with punched openings, like weird smaller openings in the transom area, but I don't know why they did it. Anyhow, so Planktown, and then moving down the street, eventually down to the Awfully Building, which is where Bright Oak Meats is. It still has its original little cute transom windows, they're little baby ones, but they're behind a very oppressive awning, so yanking off the awning and just scrape and paint on those. And then where we can, we'll do storms as well to like improve the thermal. Anyhow, all that to say, we're now re-enrolled in the program, which, you know, might have some good opportunities for collaboration in the future. B, some of these projects are on the city's historic landmark inventory. Stevens Perkins, I think, is, the IUF building, I think is, I'm not sure if actually the Masonic Lodge is where the Queen Bee is. I don't think it is, but I'm pretty sure Stevens Perkins and IUF are. So we'll need to think about what that process is needing to be for these replacements. I know we've in the past not been as watchful over some of the commercial properties as we have been in the Washburn district, but technically they are under our purview. So that is topic one. That went longer than I planned. Topic two.
Wait, pause as a brief aside.
Yeah.
I don't know that we've ever resolved it. There's a strange thing with the historic landmark buildings
Yeah.
that are not within the historic overlay.
Yeah.
That I don't know that we've ever resolved how our review relates to because the code calls us out or calls them out in our function. To my recollection, I have my computer in front of me, so I'd look it up, but, and I don't know, like, welcome to. But, sorry, our, like, the historic commission code,
Historic Commission, okay.
which is like, government, administration, and then,
Right down here.
so then under powers or functions.
Functions.
Is in here.
Under the list, the historic landmark list is in here somewhere too, and there it says something, I
A
think.
little further
about
down,
other
can you scroll down to 6? Yeah. So it's the make recommendations,
Oh, yeah,
but it doesn't call out specifically the
landmark.
landmarks. And to my knowledge, the landmarks are not in a historic overlay district. They're just their own thing.
So that list is here in the historic overlay
Really?
district, surprisingly.
Oh,
I know.
Well,
There you
And
go,
then
yeah.
historic sites and structures.
at the very top,
It was the charging language.
the purpose, it talks about the second sentence. Oh, no, it's not the second sentence.
We should have to make some-
Historic district implements the plan.
It says, the first sentence at the end, it says it use of identified historical landmark structures and sites.
So are they like satellite sites of the overlay then?
Like the overlay
not-
just applies like in a few
Right,
really
like
Not
splotchy.
usually how overlays go. Usually they're contiguous. That doesn't mean they can't.
No, that's not true.
Right, and like our,
Our nodal development
Yeah.
overlay,
Yeah.
we have different nodes all over the city.
yeah. So I think they are covered then
Okay.
by the historic
That would
overlay
be
district.
Medicaid.
The Washburn has its own title, but the historic overlay can apply to other things outside on the adopted historic landmark inventory, urbanized areas. blah, blah,
The
blah.
district
These
is its own thing
sites.
within the overall overlay.
Interesting. I was gonna
Okay.
talk about it in a minute, but the Bratton Hadley House, which is no longer there, it
Mhm.
burned down a long time ago.
Right.
That property is for sale right now,
Yeah,
and
it needs to be taken off because it wasn't the property that was designated, right? It was just the structure. I think is how I would take that.
I don't know, it has a very important tree.
Is it the big
Mhm.
tree?
Yeah.
Cause
A walnut.
the car lot next door had
Yeah,
just
I
parked all
know.
the
Yeah,
vehicles
they
all
got a
over it at one point.
Big hand slap on that. There's a- well, I was watching, I was like, ooh, they moved a truck finally.
Andy was all over
Yeah,
it.
they had a compliance thing, right?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, interesting. Well, so those will be coming down the pipes and we need to think about, I guess, what that means. Um, Yes, and I guess it's gonna be $2,200 a pop.
Wait until after February, or March or whatever.
Yeah,
Just, and not to belabor the point, but there are like 4 or 5 different definitions in our chapter 6 definition section that define different terms, defines historic landmark district, historic site, historic commission, historic landmark inventory. Anyway, those may be helpful in sorting out that spaghetti mess of. Tom and I could potentially work on kind of a memo or some kind of just interpretation of the code on how all those things play together and what means what, run it by our legal counsel at some point. Provide it for future reference, if that's helpful.
I would like to have that eventually.
Okay, so then the
I
second,
had a
Yeah, go
question
ahead.
about what you're talking, so Plaintown as an example, you mentioned their sign is over a big portion of the, so then that means they move the sign somewhere else, right? So there's implications about, or removing the awning at the meat market.
Yep.
So do they replace the awning or just not have an awning anymore? So there's kind of the snowball effect of, okay. So you guys are thinking about all that.
yeah, I
Would the
mean,
grant cover like the broader scope of all of those changes then? for the property
ideally,
Owners?
I mean, like the awning, we might just yank off the awning,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Or, reinstalling a different awning later could be a different project down the road.
Yeah.
But right now, just in terms of our bandwidth, like, and the ability to execute this project,
Sure.
with a bunch of volunteers, right? Like, speaking of needing to be retired, yeah, so that awning, yeah, we'll see if we get it figured out in time to include it in the grant, but if we
Sure.
won't, then it just won't be in there and it'll be something that happens later. And the sign, yeah, they'll just have to figure out a new sign and get a new sign permit.
Okay.
Maybe they just put letters in each of the little windows, like.
The grocery
like
store,
the grocery stores, yeah, or they get a little cute,
which I don't think that
Flags
meets our
and-
sign code.
probably not. Though it's just painted on, so. Um, okay, so then the second thing, back in whenever, November. I actually went up to the CLG workshop. There was a SHPO CLG workshop up in Dallas, Oregon, because it was about windows and like historic storefronts on main streets, and usually it's only open to CLGs, but then because well, this year they opened it up to representatives of Main Street organizations, which since I'm on the SRDC board, now I'm part of a Main Street organization as well. So I went just to download and absorb. And my biggest takeaway was specifically independents, well, both independents in Dallas are smaller than us and very proactive with their like kind of outreach and action on like preservation and revitalization, kind of like urging people to do stuff like, and like helping to facilitate it, like really pushing that as a priority. Like you just, like you feel it in the downtown, like that there's a lot different things going on. Everybody's really excited about it. Like it's a really big priority for the city. Like the city is really excited and, trying to incentivize where they can and doing a lot of storytelling around it. And I feel like, no criticism to anyone in this building, but I don't feel like that's happening very much here, especially as somebody who's feeling like I'm trying to like save a bunch of things all the time and feeling like there are very few resources for that, and that we have private developers just like struggling so hard to figure out how to make these things work and getting very little like help, even just emotional help. Good job, like it's just really hard. And then also layered onto that, we have, CETA buying up, these properties, which is great. It's like, it could be great. but we don't know yet, right? And right now, those properties that have been bought up aren't necessarily being activated, used, maintained, taken care of, right? Like that Buick building isn't gonna get better, sitting vacant, empty, no utilities, right? Like it's gonna get worse. It is nationally historically listed. It's actually ironically not on our local inventory list. So I don't know actually how much we have to do with it, but it's
I think there's a
problematic.
provision for that too.
Huh?
I think there's a provision for if it's if it's federally listed.
Yeah. So anyhow, it's problematic. You know, the school, obviously, we're struggling hard. It looks terrible. Like, what do we do about it? And like, you know, is there something more we could be doing to like facilitate just a general community spirit of stewardship and preservation and all of this? I don't know, but Independence in Dallas are doing a great job. And so part of what they're doing, they are using some of their SHPO money to actually like almost provide consulting to property owners, which is really cool. So I don't know if you can go to that website. You can just probably type in Independence, Oregon Historic Design Assistance and it'll pop up.
You know, do they have like a staff person on the city that's a historic planner or?
So they have so Fred Evander, who I think we should have come as a guest, is a planner who's like really into this, but they have two hired consultants that do this consulting with property owners. One of them is an architect, one of them is a window restoration person. And so they'll send people out to the sites and be like, oh, you have a house in the Washburn and you're thinking about doing something with it, like, you know, here we have SHPO funds to send somebody out for an hour and talk with you about your options, about your limitations, you know, like, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if in the future, as if SHPO funds exist anymore, and we want to look at next grant cycle, like thinking about this in the future for our grant money could be kind of cool. And I definitely think getting that Fred in here, like even just on a Zoom during one of our meetings, it'd be cool to have him just tell us about how they got there. How did they make this happen? Like, can he give us all the cheats now so that, you know, if we wanted to do something, we wouldn't have to start from scratch? How is this going? And is it successful? Is it hard behind the scenes? Like, does it just look great, but like really it's nuanced and terrible? Like, I don't think so. I didn't get that impression, but it was pretty interesting.
Question on those initial design concepts. Are those like pre-approved designs? Do you know?
No, they're not. This is like, you know, you wanna do an ADU and you're out on your historic site, like, is that even allowed, right? Like, let's, you know, you could kind of put it over there. At least that's my assumption. Like, this is not like pre-approved design plans, or like somebody wants to put an addition on, or they're
Right.
talking about putting a big dormer on their historic house. Like, you send this person over there and be like,
Sure.
well, you know, maybe on the back, you know, but not on these sides, you know,
Right.
or they want to tear off the porch and you're like,
Yeah.
you know, just all the things like before they get here with a proposal, right?
Right,
Like-
like send back.
Triage it.
Which we kind of do that at the counter. I mean,
Yeah,
Tom
yeah.
kind of falls into that
Yeah.
role.
Yeah,
but-
yeah, if they come in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
And usually at that point, they're invested in their idea already,
Mhm.
and that's where, you know, we break whatever kind of news to them.
Yeah,
That it's going to be more complicated because you're in the historic district.
right.
Sometimes they don't even know that. They want to do an ADU, and then we have to tell them, oh, you're in the historic district. So then here's another review you're gonna have to go
Mhm.
through.
Yeah.
So if that could be triaged on the front end, that would be great.
And I just love it's just so approachable. Like there's, you know, quick, easy to
This
digest,
looks great.
you know, click on a thing, you can get an email about a consult, right? And
Redesign assist, that's what
Yeah.
people want to see. right
exactly,
there.
yeah.
Great.
So just, I'm gonna weigh in a little
Yeah.
bit, and I don't disagree with your
Yeah.
assessment of the city's involvement. It's very lacking.
Mhm.
It's a very small portion of Tom's job
Right.
to facilitate this group even. We kind of inherited this dynamic, and I'm not sure how to grow it necessarily. I mean, even growing this committee is a
It's hard.
trial,
Yeah,
right?
it's like,
So there's, from my perspective, how I've been explained to view the dynamic is that really it's the commission's role to be that energy,
mhm.
and it's staff's role to just support it to the degree we can. which again is limited. I don't know how or if we'd ever get to the position of having like a full-time historic planner.
And I don't
Um,
think this guy is either.
Yeah, and that may not be, especially right now in the environment of budget conversations that are happening. If
Sure.
you're not aware of the mayor's task force on the budget stuff, there was a meeting tomorrow night, right? The second or third meeting that you guys can listen into. Apparently, I don't know how public they are. It's a little bizarre to me how they say it's gonna be transparent, but it's not. Anyway, the commentary aside, I mean, creating a website could be a good first step in terms of highlighting the resources that we do have.
Yeah.
Um,
And we do have, I think, on the Historic Commission website, there's, I mean, we don't have resources that's gonna.
Yeah, I mean-
We don't really have resources for anyone. Like, we have some informational resources on there, right?
Yeah.
But we don't have any money allocated to
Yeah.
anything like this. So,
I searched for this directly, but I wonder like how buried it is
Yeah.
through the drop downs here to get there. That's part of it too, is
yeah, I
if
tried
it's
to,
not
yeah.
apparent, you know, it's harder for people to find.
Yeah,
But the idea of a grant, the idea of
yeah.
if and when those grants become available again or how much,
Mhm.
it's something that could be sought.
Yeah, because we have, I mean, we, you know, we do this grant every year and a half and like,
Mm.
we decide, you know, what we're gonna do with it. And certainly, you know, it doesn't have to be limitless. It can be, we have enough in a grant cycle to do 10 consults or something, right?
Well, and how many of them are gonna be essentially the same, like,
Right. So-
going with this, like, how many of them are windows?
Mhm.
I mean, essentially, all of our things are, well, not
Mostly
essentially,
windows.
but it's mostly windows.
Yeah.
But
Windows, the
Yeah.
occasional door.
door,
Yeah.
very rare that
There was, yeah, decks, there was that one addition,
big roof,
Mr.
That big
Thor.
crazy roof they wanted to
Yeah.
add.
And so there's these onesies, twosies,
Yeah.
but like if we were like, we're gonna limit it to like, here's what you need to do for your windows, so they don't come with this plan to prepare vinyl windows. Cause they, you know, they've worked with their consultants and they're gonna do the windows.
Mhm.
To only get here and be told, no, we will not allow you to replace your wooden windows with vinyl windows.
And that they actually like have an informed option too at that point of
Yeah,
like, not just no, but like, actually, this is what you can do. And this is
Here's
why
how
it's
it's
actually important. And yeah.
And
So.
that might be just formalizing kind of Tom's ability to do some of that work. Again, I think he does do it already.
Mm.
So it might be maybe taking it a little step further, like going out on site and
Yeah,
meeting
yeah.
people proactively. I think that would be a step above what we're doing now, but definitely making it known that we have a person that is kind of the point person for questions like that and is available to consult
Yeah, that's true.
exactly
Yeah.
what that looks like.
Yeah, even just telling people they can come to the counter and ask, right? Are you curious? But then we don't want to like flood you with new.
Right, and we do tend to make, like, when we have an application, especially things that can't be seen by aerial or street
Mhm.
view, we make a site visit, but that's usually once we have an application or time has been bought in that
Mhm.
sense.
Right.
And if this is upfront, how do we
Right.
allot for that? So,
but it really might just be I mean, there's not that many houses in the Washburn, it's like a 12 square block
you're right.
area, like it really. Probably 3 of us from the commission could go and just like drop off flyers, basically.
You're right, yeah, yeah. And, you know, doing the mailers that
Yeah,
we
we
did
can
in the
do
past,
mailers.
just have a different kind of mailer for this kind of program, I think would be beneficial.
I mean, I just love the idea of having like, you know, a window consultant who just is available, you know, on basically retainer, right? To go out and do these things, and we have a certain amount of budget in our grant cycle for those consultations, and it's just a no-brainer. Like, somebody sends the email, no problem. You know, this person can run out and talk with you, because they're gonna give a really like informed and, you know, poetic discussion of these beautiful original windows and all the advice, and like assess the condition right there on the spot and be like, well, these are actually like really intact, or these are actually non-original, like maybe they're non-original wood windows, you know, maybe they're weird 1950s wood windows, I don't know. Yeah, so I just love having that as a resource that just feels like more hands-on, you know, like more.
I can assess for development purposes,
Yeah, yeah.
but I'm no window expert,
Yeah.
or historic expert
Well,
for
and
these buildings.
it is, there's this thing around like we're finally gonna have the survey behind us.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
survey has been like thing that's been taking up
Yeah, all the.
60 to 80% of the budget for the last 4 years now.
Then we do the landscape survey.
Yeah. So yeah, I think
Anyway, it was
I have,
inspiring.
yeah.
Yeah,
I have,
going
I have a
there.
little sheet that I keep track of all the proposals for when we get to the end of this.
Mhm.
So that we don't have to brainstorm all of our ideas again. So I'll add it.
I gotta reach out. Thanks for letting me
Thank
sit
you.
in.
All right. And Washburn Phase 2, speaking of,
Washburn Phase 2, what hasn't already been said? Nothing really. We received word back that WCRA is more than willing to take on Phase 2. And we would just need to develop what that looks like. I mean, obviously, it's the other half of what was not surveyed in Phase 1. I don't know if we need to necessarily have them reach out to our satellite areas of other buildings. That doesn't really go into the Washburn. So I don't think that applies. It's really the character of the Washburn and whether or not all of whatever percentage of it needs to be intact for historic purposes, which so far they have found. We're not in trouble of losing any Washburn status or anything, but certainly as we get projects through, we need to make sure that they are retaining their historic character. And as we were told, and as we know, the forward-facing character is the most important. And then as you get further back on sides and rear of property, it's less important, but still, something to be considered when we do these reviews.
and the city attorney has previously told us from the city attorney's perspective, that we have that there's a different standard. And I don't know that we ever got it articulated to this body,
Mhm.
how the historic contributing piece interfaces with the legal, what actually do we legally have to do when it's on the back?
Right.
It seemed like there was maybe a possible conflict there. I don't know if you've ever run into that, but I know that you don't,
Yeah,
You-
not
it's like
really,
you
and
have a
yeah.
project
not-
run at the city attorney's office, you're like,
Not
what do you
something
think
that
about
comes
this?
up often, for sure.
yeah,
I know we had that one project, again, it was like a bathroom window, it
Yeah.
was upstairs, rear facing. Could only be seen from a very specific angle,
Yeah.
and it was less of a factor. It still went through review, it was still part of our process. But because of its position and everything, we had, I guess, less of an issue with different materials being changed out and things like that.
and this was years ago, so I don't know what the exact
Yeah, yeah.
issue was.
So, getting the survey done, that's gonna be a big one for the commission to finish. Like I said, the talks are in place. We have like our set it and let it run every cycle being the Heritage Awards. That's something that we always know is coming up. This is one where once we're done, it'll be some time before we need to do it again, because the last one was done in 1985.
Yeah.
So,
40 years ago.
um, let's get that done if we have grant funds available.
In 2065, we return to this thing here.
We'll be talking about it
I'll
then
be
as well.
worrying about that.
So, that's the update for Phase 2.
Alright.
Hopefully the funds will be available. If anybody else needs to be involved in that talk going forward with WCRA, I will include you. If not, that's just more of an internal function for me and our contracting department to get all of that set up and agreed upon and signed and finalized, but we'll see where that's all going.
All right, anything else before we adjourn?
So are we on the schedule the last week of each month then? So,
Fourth
Fourth Tuesday, which I assume will be the last week of each month.
Yeah, okay.
Almost always.
Yeah, almost always. I don't see that changing at
Yeah,
any point.
okay.
So, yeah,
I will be out of town next month.
Okay.
got it. Noted.
Yeah, and once Tom and I were talking, we're in this tough spot where we don't have members right now, but we may be getting them depending on when the next solicitation goes out. And so I'm hesitant to move this until we know if more people are gonna join, but it feels like more people joining is always around the corner.
But you're
And
always
so-
gonna have, no matter what you choose, you know, somebody's gonna be a conflict. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we can
So-
roll with. Obviously, once we are a coherent, larger body of 9, not only the timing of things, make it work for the most people.
Right.
Otherwise, pop in when you can. And I know we had talked about like bylaws and guidelines. We have stuck with our guidelines. Does that spell out other like officer positions? Is it just chair and vice chair right now? Should we have a treasurer? Should we have a minute person? Like, our
Yeah.
recordings by state law, as I understand it, are good enough? Should we have more detailed stuff? Should we have other people involved in that? I'm happy to do the SHPO grant. If we want to pursue other grants, that might be more of the purview of that expert or whoever wants to get that grant.
Our code section actually lays out our officers. So we couldn't alter that even if we did the bylaws thing.
Got it.
Because that's just how they've set it out in the code. So the code sets out chair and vice chair elected annually.
Right.
Secretary is the development director or their designee,
Being liaison, probably.
probably.
Right.
But we have the recording, so there's very little to transcribe ever. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what this body thinks about. We're strapped for people and that makes it a challenge. You know, everybody's busy.
I mean, is there a reason that we need more formal additional positions, like functionally? Are we feeling like we need that?
Not at this time.
I don't know,
anyway.
Tom, any like staff side
Yeah, I mean,
concerns?
currently, our level of functioning, like what a treasurer would do of like tracking all the spending, because we have very specific projects, that is easy enough for me. If we were to have a body of 9 and we're pursuing all these different things, that might become more complicated as liaison, which would justify, especially because we have enough people, a treasurer. I would want to see that possibly transition to that point.
Okay.
But because I know everything that's going on, it's easy for me to track that.
Sure.
If it gets outside of what I'm capable of, then that's where I think we need to have someone that is their designated role. Yeah.
Just like, let us know, because we'll find somebody.
Right,
And
right.
we don't want to, we recognize that this is a very small chunk of a much larger job for you. And so we don't want, again, my guiding vision is for the Historic Commission to not be a problem. That's, anything else,
Yeah.
is great. And then I want to make sure we're not a problem.
And I mean, personally for me, that was this cycle of getting this grant was my first time applying for a grant, and I felt very good about that. So I can put that on my resume and feel good about that going forward. So happy to keep it going. I know, from the sounds of it, Melissa was very involved in that process. How she was balancing her other senior planning duties,
and
with
I
the city,
think-
I don't know, but
I think that was kind of more her. I think she-
wheelhouse
yes.
probably, yeah.
Because she
yeah.
now is like a liaison in Eugene.
Yep.
Doing a lot of like cultural stuff. And so I think for her, she really liked
Yep.
the pieces more like,
Yeah.
well, I don't want to speak for her about what exactly she liked, but I think it was
Yeah,
enjoyable for her. in a way.
exactly. Right. That's what I've gathered. So, but yeah, happy to keep that going forward. But as we staff up and should we get more broader in our functions and projects and the, work plan, we may need to designate other like officer duties.
Sure. Correct. Seeing nothing further, I will adjourn this meeting at 5:34. Thank you.
I'm gonna, then